In Higurashi's ONIKAKUSHI chapter, everything we knew was a lie. Keiichi's friends have drugged him, attempted murder, literally stalked him. But can we really believe this? Hinamizawa is a village surrounded in mystery, especially due to its superstitions around curses. It's theorized that the village's barbaric murders that have occurred 5 years in a row may be due to some creepy ass god's curse. Is Keiichi ever safe from its wrath? I'm Daniel from Jeddarend, and today I want to prove that only one threat to Keiichi in this story was present. Not a friend, not a god, but something else. Little reminder, this video spoils the entirety of Higurashi's mystery, so watch with caution. So to get a true idea of what's actually happened in this story, we need to firstly analyse the village's secret disease, Hinamizawa syndrome. Every villager, regardless of age or health, has a parasite of unknown origin living inside them. Whether it's airborne or is spread by infection is unknown. It's theorized that these parasites can only survive in climates of the village, so any changes to the weather or environment, like leaving the village to go somewhere else, may cause it to begin acting. And this is so the villager returns to the place it's adapted to survive in. The effects here are very minimal, unless physical or mental stress is thrown into the mix, as the parasite gradually makes stress worse and worse. The main cause of stress levels developing for the villagers is by paranoia, either from suspicion or delusion. The stress escalates so much that the victims become mentally unstable after a while. Deadly hallucinations plague their minds too, one of the most common being the sensation of having insects crawling under the skin, and the next lymph nodes, these things, having a bloody bad itch. This never-ending itch causes victims to scratch their throats until they physically can't anymore when they die of blood loss. These feelings of paranoia and suspicion make people very, very dangerous. If the itch hasn't killed you, you've either killed yourself or other people, or, let's be honest, you're in prison. So now that we know about this syndrome, let's interpret what happened to Keiichi in a different way. When we first met Keiichi and his friends, we learned that he left the village for a short period of time to attend a funeral, and this is where he contracted the disease. Nothing really happens when he's just contracted the disease, but when he learns about the horrible secrets of the village from people like Takano, Tomitake, Oishi, and that his friends are hiding lots of vital information from him, his suspicion and stress increases, which increases the intensity of the disease. Because of the intensity increasing, Keiichi's paranoia is increasing more and more. Anything that is remotely scary is interpreted severely worse than it actually is. This absolutely applies to the first confrontation with Nena. The reason Nena and all of her friends hide anything about the dark secrets of the village to Keiichi is out of simple consideration. They're not hiding any information about things they may be involved in, they just simply don't want somebody who's recently moved into the village to have to worry about history that is very disturbing. However though, from how mad she got here, it would be so hard to tell that this was the case, and of course Keiichi can't. Her outburst here is actually really out of character for a usually rational and composed girl, so I kinda get the impression that when Keiichi asks if she's hiding secrets from him, instead of thinking he's asking about the mysterious deaths, she's thinking he's asking about the secrets of her awful past. Oishi knows about them, so there is a slight possibility Keiichi's been told. She also can't stand lies, especially in matters as serious as this. This explains why she becomes so stressed. If you ask me, Keiichi lying about his whereabouts of Oishi would have made her mad even if this wasn't ONIKAKUSHI. Not only is she really damn scary here, but she's hallucinated to have these terrifying, demonic eyes in the anime. And in the visual novel, she's described to have a gaze so terrifying that it pierces through him. It's almost like the gaze is connected to Keiichi's fear. The more fear, the worse and more intimidating the gaze becomes. The next event, where Keiichi believes that Nena's been spying on him and Oishi's phone call, well, I don't really think she was trying to do this. I would never believe that she came to the house knowing that Oishi would be on the phone, and I think it would be more sensible to say she was going to finally talk to Keiichi about the truth he'd need to know surrounding the village's secrets. When she heard him on the phone though, she probably didn't want to interrupt him and possibly gain suspicion from Oishi, and in the end her curiosity definitely gets the best of her, causing her to listen in. She cannot miss out on this vital information. I think she gave up on trying to tell Keiichi anything though. He's just learned some really shocking information over the phone, and of course the message is not going to get through. He's going to be too freaked out to process anything. It could have possibly made his situation worse, so she left. The next day, we then see the symptoms of the syndrome first developing. A cold that feels like a fever, and the weird feeling that somebody is watching you, even though nobody can be seen. This invisible presence seen by Keiichi is, believe it or not, the first sign of a supernatural event. This presence is not a hallucination. There is genuinely somebody standing there. The invisible presence of Hanyu, the true being behind Oyashiro-sama, stands there. Funnily enough, unlike Keiichi thinks, she is not evil whatsoever. If anything, she wants good to happen. She feels as if she is so ridiculously helpless in Keiichi's situation that all she can genuinely do is apologize, repeating the words, "I'm sorry." If you read the VN, do you remember the constant apologising Katie heard when waking up from his train journey back from the funeral? Well, it's very likely that this was Hanyu. She has a heartbroken tone in her voice because she just knows the effect that leaving the village would have on Keiichi. His paranoia gets worse and worse when he finds out from Oishi that somebody may be after his life. Of course, they couldn't possibly be, and I really get the impression that Oishi knows this. I can't say this for certain though, because a murder and a disappearance usually happens on the day of the Watanagashi, but this year, 2 murders happened, so maybe he thought 2 disappearances could happen, one of them being Keiichi's. Keiichi feels as if Oishi is trying to set him up, which he is. If he tricks Keiichi that he's in danger, he'll be able to get as much information as possible for the case. Solving this case means he can finally avenge his friend, the damn construction manager, who died on the first year of mysterious deaths, by discovering the truth of who killed him. He feels obligated to solve it before his retirement in a few months, so he's acting out of desperation now, but it still really surprises me how far he's willing to go to get this information. Next, we have the iconic Ohagi event, and for Keiichi, the proof that his friends are after his life. His friends show up at the door, and he's understandably terrified to talk to them after what he's learnt. They become very intimidating, asking him what he was doing while out of school. Mion threatens Keiichi that nothing can ever slip past her. She's not a next level stalker though. She's aware of all the topics Keiichi discussed with Oishi during their lunch because her family own Angel Mort, the restaurant they chatted in. Keiichi was totally intimidated during this conversation, and I think that's what she wanted. If you ask me, her intentions were to make him too fearful of learning any more sensitive information. Learning about their connections to the incidents and tragedies like Rena's backstory from the viewpoints of Oishi instead of a personal one from Rena would naturally make his impression of her fearful beyond words. He'd be anything but friendly. He's learning stuff about the village from Oishi as well, so it wouldn't take long for Keiichi to accuse his friends of things they haven't got a clue about. Due to being in the Sonozaki family, Mion would get this especially badly. They then gave the Ohagi to him as a get well soon present, something that just really shows how much they care for him. However, you really think Keiichi is going to be able to appreciate their efforts after finding something very undesirable inside? A needle? Wait, actually, was there really a needle? Can he genuinely believe that this is definite proof his friends are after his life? The answer is no. You're probably asking, why would I think something as ridiculous as this? Well, Tsumi Horoboshi reveals that the friends only wanted to make the Ohagi really damn spicy with hot sauce just for a prank. So either a literal needle was put into the food by mistake, or for a more likely conclusion, the needle was a hallucination. And this explains why he's unable to find the needle for evidence afterwards, even though he emptied his entire house. It also explains why, in the last day of the story, Mion genuinely has no idea of what she's being accused of when Keiichi talks about the attempted murder with the needle. Interestingly enough, as a kid, Keiichi read a manga about a girl secretly lacing a burger with needles and serving it to a man. He was a really young kid at the time, so poor him, he had nightmares for days afterwards. But oddly enough, it could be likely that the hallucination was based off this memory. Some say that the pain in his mouth that would have been caused by the hot sauce's spice could have been misinterpreted as the sensation of the pricking of a needle. It's also argued that maybe there was a hair in the Ohagi, which he might have misinterpreted as a needle after he started feeling pain. It felt like my personality was being ripped in two. Keiichi becomes much colder due to the fear of his life ending. He begins thinking that he must become stronger mentally. He must always be on the lookout for his killer, and he can't ever let his guard down. He thinks all of the lovely moments with his friends are just trying to distract him from the true killer's wrath, so he stops trying to give in to them. In other words, any remotely normal emotions like fun, happiness, compassion, regret are slowly lost in the fear of death. I so wish he talked to his parents about the situation, but he believes he's in so much danger that just as much as telling them will put them in danger from the entire village. The fear Keiichi had before has now taken another turn. Malice. He goes to school very early in search of a murder weapon to defend himself with, but it takes a very unexpected turn when he almost gets deliberately ran over. The first true sign of danger shows itself here, done by none other than the Mountain Dogs, the true masterminds behind the mysteries of Hinamizawa. Why the Mountain Dogs did something that could have killed him is anyone's guess. However, I think you could probably piece it down to the motivations of Takano. Maybe this incident was solely done with the intent of increasing his paranoia, so that when he reaches level 5 symptoms of the syndrome, in other words where the disease becomes so deadly that you kill yourself from clawing out your throat, they could have access to another living research subject to gain data from, or dissect, one or the other. And this could be why, even though knowing the dangers, Takano never held back on creeping Keiichi out at the Watanagashi festival. I saw another theory saying that they could be deliberately trying to hit him with the car and disfigure him really badly, so that they could transport him to the research centre in a state unable to fight back in. Her motive doesn't fully add up, however, because of Tokyo. This is the organisation organization responsible for the research's funding and the one commanding the end of the research to happen within the next 3 years. She already has a firm belief that no matter how much she researches, she will never be able to find the true identity of the syndrome in that time and has already given up. So I don't think it's likely she's doing this to get more source for her research. I think she just did it because she can and that she wants to indulge in the pain of others. I mean, judging by her despicable reaction after gassing the entire village, it wouldn't be surprising whatsoever. After the school day Katie has with, let's just say, not the most safe beginning, Katie leaves with saying barely anything to his friends, and a really sad scene with Nenna begins. We can really see Katie now only interpreting these situations as acts of malice. She followed him on the way home, but that wasn't because she was planning something deadly. She just wanted to say how worried she was about him. Nenna's house is the same direction as Katie's house, so of course they need to go down this road together. A really interesting coincidence is also mentioned here. Satoshi and his strange disappearance. Katie, being totally paranoid and dangerous, is doing exactly as Satoshi did before he disappeared. Acting the same, feeling the same, heck, even carrying the same murder weapon. You really can't help but think, is he going to be transferred out? In other words, how could it be anything but death? It really looks like the friend group may have been involved in Satoshi's death when Nenna dismisses the entirety of what happened when saying he transferred. It sounds so vague, but that's genuinely because she doesn't know. She doesn't want to start any rumours or be the teller of false stories as a matter of respect. Now imagine if you were in as much danger as Katie thought he was in. If you then had a call from your parents saying they would be going out for work-related reasons, leaving you entirely on your own, it would be game over. Of course this happened to Katie. He is convinced he'll be dead by the time his parents come back. The night doom strikes. Nenna comes to his house, aiming to give him some really nice food that she made. No matter how much like a genuine friend she sounds, it's just a little bit creepy that she knows his parents would be away from home, so he would have either ate nothing or something unhealthy, like, some cup ramen? This actually has a really quite simple explanation though. Nenna and Katie's mother often go shopping to the same store and they get along with each other quite well, so she's definitely learned from her about their absences and what Katie normally eats when home alone. She wanted to enter Katie's house to cook the food, talk about the situation they're in, make stuff up between them. This is not Onidamashi. She will not use this as an excuse to commit murder. Despite wanting to make up with Katie, Nenna gets really quite mad in the beginning of this conversation. Her once best friend is not only being a liar, but a really quite mean person, even though she's gone out of her way this much for him. Now, I want you to think about something. Have you ever made a joke you really regretted to a friend in a really quite bad situation? Well, I really hope the consequences you got weren't as bad as the ones here. Nenna plays a little prank on Katie to sound like she knows everything about his dinner, what he bought, where he bought it, and who with. I can't fully put my finger on why she'd do this, but I can assume that she was trying to create one of those scenarios where he'd be relieved when he realised it was a prank. They'd probably laugh at the joke, and let's be honest, how he reacted as well. I'm sure she would have never realised that, he will violently crush her fingers with the opening in the bloody door. She's then seen standing miserably in the rain, getting her clothes completely soaked, constantly apologising, saying "gomenasai," I'm sorry. In fact, was she really the one apologising? It's interesting though, she apologises the exact same way Hanye does. How could Katie have heard an apology this quiet from the distance they were from each other? As weird as it sounds, I think he heard Hanye's voice and hallucinated Nenna's lips to be moving in response to it. We can now really begin to see the fears of the presences behind Katie really increasing to a dangerous level. He nearly smashes up the entirety of his house's entrance in defence. In fact, he can't even do anything normal anymore when he just tries to do as much as go shopping with his mother. The presences are there and they're bloody terrifying as well. The situation can't worsen, right? Well, the next day is the last day of Katie's life. As expected, it begins really quite unpleasantly with a confrontation with Mion. Katie is horrible to her. He accuses her and her friends of things left, right and centre. And ONIKAKUSHI then does what it does best, which is making the characters look bad. We really see Mion lashing out her anger due to Oishi having told him everything. And we see her saying that she wants to kill him. Of course she doesn't. She wouldn't even dream of doing something as bad as that. But she was just mad and let her words get the best of her. Oishi is so convinced that the Sonozakis are the root of all evil. The amount of incorrect theories about the Sonozaki family he could have fed Katie with are unimaginable. Of course Mion would despise Oishi. After school that day, we see another scene with Nena that is genuinely weird. Seriously, this one here for a person with zero murderous intent is so odd. The way she acts, that damn laugh, and more importantly, the blimmin' hatchet she's carrying. They're terrifying. How do I possibly prove Nena's innocence? Well, the theory of this entirely being a hallucination may be possible. In other words, Nena may have never been there. Look at this footage here. She's there, but somehow disappears and reappears right behind him the second he looks away. No sound, no nothing. It's really quite weird. What's even more odd is that there is no sign whatsoever of him blacking out and falling to the ground or losing track of time from stress. Another scene of significance is when Katie runs as fast as he can until he's completely out of breath, and yet sees Nena right behind him the second he looks back, even though she was walking. There wasn't a single audible sign of fatigue. In fact, he couldn't even hear her breathing, and this really proves that she may have never been there in the first place. Maybe all of this was hallucinated, or maybe only parts of it were. I wouldn't be surprised if only the really scary facial expressions and the bloody insane laughter were the only things hallucinated. If I listened to anything Nena was saying, apart from the laughter obviously, I would think that this is a concerned person trying to help her friend. She felt so guilty that she couldn't help Satoshi recover from the emotional torture he went through, and really doesn't want to fail again. She's also holding her hatchet. This is definitely protection from the bat Katie has in case she's attacked, but she says that it's being held with the intent of finding something over at the dam, which is fair enough. I think her intention was to try and rebond with Katie by doing something they'd find fun, but she was really stupid if she didn't realise at all how creepy she would be perceived carrying that around. When Katie runs away from Nena in immense fear again, she interestingly doesn't follow him, and Katie stumbles across two people thought to be villagers, who then make him unconscious. These people were the mountain dogs, but of course we didn't know this at the time, so we believe even more so that the whole village may be involved. That being said though, the film adaptation features every single villager actually gathering up to stop Katie, so you could really interpret those events differently. The mountain dogs would need to secretly transport Katie to the clinic so that the syndrome doesn't risk exposure and would have become deadly to him, but we see Katie wake up back in his house. We know they couldn't have done this. They retaliated. Why? Well, they were seen. Who by? Either a villager or more likely Nena. They could not possibly move Katie's body without her noticing because of how top secret the research is. Also, if Nena was truly a killer, she could have brought his body back to the junkyard and killed him instantly with the hatchet she may have been carrying, but she didn't. She quite literally did the ONIKAKUSHI with zero malicious intent. So now that the situation is over, what do I think happened overall? Well, both of the theories of just how much in these conversations was hallucinated have things that don't fully add up, but I think it's most likely he exaggerated her intimidation. We then have the saddest event of all. This paranoia finally gets him into a situation so bad that he commits murder. His friends are unusually happy and then they restrain him. They say what happened to Tomitake will happen to him. He died, right? He clawed out his throat and died. But you know what also happened to him? He lost a club activity. So for a punishment game, they drew some funny things on his face and shirt. Nena and Mion look like they're holding a syringe filled with the drug that killed Tomitake. But are they really? Believe it or not, no. Casey actually realises in Sumi Horoboshi that this syringe was a marker. He thought he was going to die, so he gets his bat and, well, kills them out of the fear for his life. I genuinely teared up when I learnt about the forgotten memory of Nena Katie had. If Katie had actually played baseball like he said, he would have known that the director isn't some evil criminal. He was not only a director of the Hinamizawa baseball team, but a doctor too. He was the one person with some hope of treating his illness. He's also accompanied by the mountain dogs, not because they want to kill him, but for restraining purposes if he ever becomes dangerous when they try to treat him. Katie runs away as fast as he can and the fear of her presence gets deeper inside him. And eventually, the syndrome becomes so bad that him clawing his throat out in a public phone booth causes him to die in a hospital 24 hours after. He concludes to Oishi that the surreality of these crazy situations has made him convinced that nothing human could have been responsible. They could never be responsible for what he thinks is the possession of his friends, the invisible presences, and the mysterious deaths. He decides to do what he never even thought was possible to do rationally, and believes in Oyashiro-sama's curse. This is the one thing that has always made him struggle to see the difference between delusion and reality, and the fact he's believing in something so irrational really just proves how incomprehensible his situation is. He may have died, but the story definitely doesn't end here. After Keiichi's death, we see the tampering of evidence he left behind when in fear for his life. Behind his room's clock, there was a note that summarised the situation he thought he was in and what he thought was the syringe. A part of the note had been discovered to have been torn off, and the syringe wasn't there at all. Now, who do we blame for this? We can either go to Oishi, the first person we are told found the evidence, or the mountain dogs. It was actually confirmed that the mountain dogs searched Keiichi's house because of a rug being curled up. They probably only searched for things that may bring suspicion to the Institute, but they still could have tampered the evidence before Oishi found it. However, I think Oishi is way more likely to be at fault here. Keiichi's parents were the only people that knew about the evidence due to Keiichi having told them. Of course, they would have been questioned. Who does the questioning? Oishi does. Oishi was the only person who knew the location of the evidence. The mountain dogs had no clue about the locations of any of this. There's no way they would have the time to search the house so much so that they find something in a location as obscure as this. Of course, Oishi denies the involvement of tampering with the evidence, but I think his motive may disprove it. He was desperate to avenge the victim of the first mysterious death, a father figure but also a friend who taught him one of the greatest lessons he's ever had in life. He was going into retirement a few months later, so he would do anything to find the truth of his friend's death. If this testimony had anything that looked ridiculous in it, the investigation of the mysterious deaths may be closed, so Oishi, by removing anything seeming really odd, can prolong his investigation as much as possible. What Keiichi thought was a syringe, in other words a marker pen, being the murder weapon, yeah, that's not going to look genuine at all. It was really hard to tell what was removed from the notes though. However, we knew that Keiichi actually thought the damn construction manager was alive. This is because his friends referred to Irie as the manager, but he's the manager of the Hinamizawa Fighters baseball team. He definitely doesn't manage a dam. If this statement is believed to be true, then not only is the validity of this investigation going to be completely screwed, but Oishi may be forced to stop his investigation. This investigation already has the chief's disapproval. If he then realises that this investigation was entirely wrong, of course he's going to want to stop it. He's not going to be lenient whatsoever. But anyway guys, that wraps up everything that happens in ONIKAKUSHI and why it was all a lie. Searching for this plot's answers and how much you can find the more you take it apart is something I really didn't think I'd ever have so much fun experiencing. The mysteries are truly brilliant. They confuse you to your limit. The constant boundary between human and fantasy and delusion and reality is also one of the key reasons this mystery interests me. So many things in this chapter seem so mysterious that they had no rational human explanation at all. And the mystery in Oyashiro-sama is so convincing in so many ways at first, even though you really just have your primal instinct telling you, don't think this. The more you dig into this plot though, the falser what happens in this story becomes, and the more your entire view on the situations changes. Every single way I interpreted this story in the past is completely different to how I interpret it now. Anyway guys, I'm going to end the video here, so I really hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to give a thumbs up, subscribe, and comment your thoughts down below. I'd be really interested to see your interpretations and how they differ from mine. And yeah, I'll see you all in the next one. Bye guys!